You know, it's funny how something that seems so small, a tiny capsule, really, can make us feel like we're doing something good for ourselves. I remember sitting at the breakfast table one morning, watching my neighbor Joe pull out this little plastic pill organizer. Monday to Sunday, all lined up. He popped a few vitamins in his mouth, chased them down with orange juice, and smiled like he had the secret to staying young. Gotta keep the ticker strong, he'd joke. But not long ago, Joe had a health scare. A stroke. Thankfully, it wasn't fatal, but it shook all of us who knew him. And what stunned his doctor was that Joe had no obvious risk factors, except one. He'd been taking high-dose vitamin E supplements every day for years. Because, like many of us, he thought it was helping his heart. That got me thinking, how many other folks out there are taking that same pill, thinking it's harmless, even helpful, without knowing it could be quietly raising their risk of something as serious as a stroke? In today's video, I want to talk with you about this. It's not to scare anyone, but to shine a light on something that's often misunderstood. We'll walk through the surprising science behind vitamin E, who might be at risk, and what safer, smarter choices you can make for your health. If you find this kind of conversation helpful, please give this video a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel Vibrant Elders, and share your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to hear if this strikes a chord with you or someone you know. Now, let's start with why so many of us began taking vitamin E in the first place. Back in the day, maybe you remember this, there was a time when vitamin E was practically being hailed as a miracle. The magazines at the grocery store checkout lines were full of bold headlines. Vitamin E protects your heart, the anti-aging vitamin. Live longer with this antioxidant secret. Doctors were even recommending it in passing. You'd hear about it on morning talk shows, maybe even from a neighbor who'd just gotten back from a visit to their naturopath. It was everywhere. Capsules on sale at Walgreens. Fortified cereals claiming, now with more vitamin E. Even skin creams and lotions were bragging about it on the label. It felt like if you weren't taking vitamin E, you were missing out on something that could keep you young and strong. That's how it was sold to us. And I get it. Who wouldn't want that? As we get older, we start paying more attention to things like heart disease, inflammation, memory loss. The promise of something as simple as a vitamin helping us stay ahead of all that, that's powerful. It felt safe, affordable, and most of all, proactive. We weren't just reacting to health problems, we were trying to prevent them. I remember a good friend of mine, Barbara, who swore by her routine. "I've been taking vitamin E for 20 years, she'd say proudly. "It's the reason I haven't caught a cold in 10. She even gave bottles as gifts during Christmas. That's how deeply some people believed in it. The science at the time seemed to back it up. Early observational studies did show that people who consumed more antioxidants, including vitamin E, seemed to have lower rates of heart disease. But here's where things got tricky. Those people were also more likely to eat healthy, exercise, not smoke, and see their doctors regularly. So was it the vitamin E or their overall lifestyle? Later, when researchers started testing vitamin E in more controlled ways, clinical trials, large studies, they started to see a different picture. The benefits weren't as clear-cut as we thought. In fact, when taken in high doses over time, the risks started showing up too. But by that point, the habit had already taken hold. Many seniors had added vitamin E to their daily regimen. It became part of the routine, right alongside calcium, vitamin D, and maybe a baby aspirin. And because it's just a vitamin, it doesn't usually set off alarm bells. We trust that label. We assume it's safe. The story of vitamin E is really the story of how a little bit of good press and hopeful science can create a wave of belief that's hard to stop. Even now, some folks still take it daily without thinking twice. But as we're about to see, just because something is popular or even once recommended doesn't mean it's without risks. And it turns out, the very thing we hoped would protect us might be causing harm if we're not careful. So what changed? How did something once celebrated for its health benefits end up being linked to something as serious as a stroke? Well, the answer lies in what researchers began uncovering when they dug deeper into how vitamin E works in the body, especially at higher doses and over longer periods. Vitamin E is what they call a fat-soluble antioxidant. That means it gets stored in your body's fat tissue rather than being flushed out like water-soluble vitamins. That's part of what made it attractive. It sticks around, so you don't need as much, right? But it also means if you take too much, it can build up quietly over time. Now here's the surprising part. While vitamin E does fight oxidative stress, which can protect your cells, it also has a blood-thinning effect, and not just a light one. At high doses, especially 400 IU, international units, or more per day, it begins to interfere with your blood's ability to clot properly. Think of your blood like a well-tuned faucet. Normally, it flows just right, strong enough to deliver oxygen, but thick enough to stop bleeding if you scrape your knee. Vitamin E, taken in large amounts, can act like turning that faucet too loose. It thins the blood, making it harder to clot when needed. That's not always a bad thing. Many people take aspirin or blood thinners for heart health, but when it's uncontrolled or stacked on top of other medications, it can tip the balance too far. And where this really matters is in the brain. When blood vessels in the brain are under pressure, like in people with high blood pressure or older adults with fragile arteries, extra thin blood can increase the risk of a hemorrhagic stroke. That's the kind caused by bleeding in the brain, not a blockage. It's less common than an ischemic stroke, but often more deadly or disabling. In one major analysis of over 100,000 participants, researchers found that people taking high-dose vitamin E had a 22% higher risk of hemorrhagic stroke. That's not just a blip on the radar. And remember, these weren't folks who were overdosing like crazy. They were simply taking what many would consider a normal supplement dose. That's what makes this tricky. Most people who are at risk don't even know they are. They think it's just a vitamin, over the counter, natural. How could it hurt me? But that's exactly the point. Because it's so common, and because it builds up silently over time, the harm doesn't always show up until something serious happens, like Joe's stroke. And it's not just vitamin E on its own. When it's combined with other blood thinners, like warfarin, Plavix, or even baby aspirin, the effect multiplies. What starts as a well-meaning supplement becomes a silent risk factor. The bottom line is, the science has changed. We know more now. And what we're learning is that vitamin E, while helpful in some cases, can be dangerous in others, especially for older adults who are already managing multiple health conditions. You might be wondering right about now, well, does this apply to me? Should I be worried? That's a fair and important question, and the answer depends a lot on your personal health picture. Let's start with age. If you're over 65, your body just doesn't process supplements the way it used to. Liver and kidney function naturally slow down a bit, and blood vessels become more sensitive. That doesn't mean you're frail or fragile. It just means your body works differently now, and what was once harmless might start acting differently in your system. Then there's blood pressure. Many older adults are dealing with hypertension, whether it's well-controlled or not. And high blood pressure puts extra strain on the walls of your blood vessels, especially in the brain. Now imagine throwing in a blood thinner like vitamin E on top of that. The pressure's already high. Add in thinner blood, and the risk of a vessel bursting goes up. That's the concern. And maybe you're like many of my friends, taking a low-dose aspirin daily because your doctor once recommended it. Or maybe you're on something stronger, like warfarin, Plavix, or another prescription blood thinner after a heart surgery or clot. These medications are powerful, and they do important work. But combined with high doses of vitamin E, they can push your blood's thinning ability into dangerous territory. Another group that needs to be cautious? Folks with a history of stroke, especially hemorrhagic stroke. Even if that stroke happened years ago, your brain's blood vessels might still be more vulnerable than someone who's never had one. The last thing you want is to unknowingly increase the odds of a second event. Even beyond those major categories, there's a wider group who could be at risk without knowing it. Maybe you take a multivitamin that includes vitamin E, and you also drink fortified almond milk or eat cereal with added E. Then, maybe a separate supplement too, because it says it's good for anti-aging or immune support. It adds up fast. And when you add it on top of other meds or conditions, that's when things can get serious. What's tricky is, many seniors don't even realize they're at risk. They feel fine. They trust what's on the shelf. And to be honest, some of these risks weren't widely talked about even a decade ago. But the research has caught up, and we owe it to ourselves to stay informed. This isn't about blaming or judging. It's about protecting what matters most: our health, our independence, our peace of mind. You've worked hard to get to this point in life. You deserve to know what's going on in your body and how something as simple as a vitamin could be tipping the scales in the wrong direction. The good news? Once you know where the risks lie, you can make smarter, safer choices. And that's what we'll talk about next. Let's talk about something that happens in real life, every single day, without anyone realizing it might be putting their health at risk. Picture this. You wake up in the morning, head into the kitchen, and pull out your little pill organizer. You take your multivitamin with breakfast, maybe along with a calcium or vitamin D supplement. Nothing unusual so far, right? Then for breakfast, you pour yourself a bowl of cereal. It's a brand you like because it's labeled heart healthy, and it's fortified with extra vitamins, vitamin E included. Later in the afternoon, you feel like giving your immune system a boost, so you take one of those soft gel vitamin E capsules you picked up at Costco a few months ago, just in case. By the end of the day, you've taken in far more vitamin E than you intended, without ever thinking you'd done anything risky. This kind of layering is incredibly common, especially among older adults who are health conscious. You see vitamin E on so many labels: meal replacement shakes, protein bars, almond milk, granola, even some salad dressings. The food industry adds it as a selling point, and the supplement industry reinforces it. And we think, well, more must be better, right? But when it comes to fat-soluble vitamins like E, more isn't better. It can actually be harmful. Unlike water-soluble vitamins, like B or C, which your body can flush out if there's too much, fat-soluble ones stick around. They get stored in your fat tissue and liver, building up little by little. That's why someone can take what feels like normal amounts each day, and over time, it turns into too much. One friend of mine, Carol, had no idea how much she was getting until she brought her supplements into her doctor's office. Between her multivitamin, her breakfast routine, and her skincare regimen, she was taking over 600 IU of vitamin E a day, far beyond the recommended daily intake of just 15 milligrams, or about 22 IU. That's a 27 times increase. And she had no clue. What makes this even more important is that it's not about overdosing in one sitting. It's about how easily your daily habits can stack up without you noticing, especially if you're already managing high blood pressure, heart disease, or taking blood thinners. And when doctors ask about medication, most folks forget to mention supplements. They don't see them the same way. But believe me, your body doesn't know the difference between over-the-counter and prescription when it comes to how substances interact inside you. So the next time you reach for that supplement bottle, it's worth asking yourself, do I really need this? Am I already getting enough from my diet or other sources? Is this helping, or could it quietly be causing harm? You might be surprised how simple it is to dial things back and still stay healthy. And that's exactly what we're going to look at next: safer ways to get what your body needs, without the hidden dangers. Now, the good news is, you don't need to live in fear of every supplement bottle or breakfast label. There are safe, simple ways to get what your body truly needs without tipping into risky territory. It all starts with understanding what's actually necessary and where to find it naturally. Most people don't realize that the recommended daily intake of vitamin E for adults is just 15 milligrams. That's about 22 international units, or IU. But a lot of supplement capsules you see at the store, they're labeled 200 IU, 400 IU, even 1,000 IU in some cases. That's way beyond what your body needs, especially if you're already eating a relatively balanced diet. And here's the better news: vitamin E is not hard to find in real food. A small handful of almonds gives you about 7 milligrams. Sunflower seeds? Even more. Spinach, avocados, olive oil. They all contain natural vitamin E in just the right proportions your body can handle. When you get your nutrients from food, they come packaged with fiber, minerals, and other compounds that help your body use them more effectively. It's nature's original supplement plan. So instead of reaching for a bottle, think about what's on your plate. A slice of whole wheat toast with peanut butter in the morning, a salad with sunflower seeds and olive oil dressing for lunch. Those choices do more than fill your stomach. They protect your heart and brain without adding unnecessary risks. Now, if you're someone who's already taking a vitamin E supplement, don't panic. The first step isn't to toss everything in the trash. It's to take a closer look. Check the dosage on your bottle. Look at your multivitamin, too. Add it up and see where you stand. You might find that you're already getting more than enough without needing that extra capsule. And talk to your doctor. I know it can feel awkward bringing up supplements. They're so everyday that they often get skipped in checkups. But your healthcare provider can give you clarity, especially if you're on medications or managing conditions that interact with vitamin E. A quick conversation might be all it takes to steer your routine in a safer direction. You might even want to bring your supplements with you to your next appointment. That way, you're not guessing. Your doctor can see exactly what you're taking and give you real-time advice. This is about protecting your long-term well-being, not giving up on taking care of yourself. Being cautious doesn't mean being fearful, it means being wise. You've lived long enough to know that health isn't about shortcuts or fads. It's about balance. It's about listening to your body and giving it what it truly needs. And most importantly, it's about making choices that support the life you still want to live, active, independent, and informed. That's real power. You know, sometimes the most caring thing we can do for ourselves isn't adding one more pill or product to our routine. It's pausing long enough to ask, is this still serving me? That's the heart of today's message. So many of us started taking vitamin E with the best intentions. We wanted to stay strong, protect our hearts, maybe even hold on to our energy and clarity a little longer. But what we now know is that more isn't always better. And something that once seemed harmless can quietly shift into something that puts our well-being at risk, especially when it builds up over time or interacts with other medications. What I hope you take away from this conversation is that your health deserves attention, not just from doctors, but from you. You've earned the right to ask questions, to rethink old habits, and to make choices that truly support the kind of life you want in your 60s, 70s, and beyond. If today's video helped you learn something new, or even just gave you a reason to look twice at your supplement shelf, I'd be honored if you gave it a thumbs up. Subscribe to our channel, Vibrant Elders, for more honest, practical advice to help you stay strong and independent. And share your thoughts below. Have you been taking vitamin E? Did any of this surprise you? Because the more we talk openly, the more we can help each other stay informed, protected, and vibrant. Your health journey is still unfolding. And with the right knowledge and community behind you, it can be a beautiful, empowered one. Until next time, take care of yourself and keep living with wisdom, one day at a time.